Today I'm at Partridge Lakes, not too far from Warrington in Cheshire, and quite tough. We've had the first frost. I have managed a few great big F1s like these, absolutely awesome fish. And what I thought I'd do in this week's Fishing Live, and before I give you the weekly fishing forecast, is just run you through a few little rig tips that really work well for me in the cooler months. And hopefully it'll help you catch a few more lovely F1s like that one. So the first tip I want to give you is all about accuracy, and more precisely accuracy of depth, knowing the depth of water that the fish are in. Now venues like this are perfect to demonstrate this, but this really is a very universal thing. It applies as much on a 20-foot deep river as it does here on this snake lake. Now, in the winter in particular, different parts of the water column will be different temperatures because they cool down. As the water cools down, the coldest water often sinks to the bottom, and you end up with what's called a thermocline of slightly warmer water somewhere in that water column. And all too often, the fish will sit in it. And you'll catch lovely F1s like that if you fish in the right depth of water. If you don't fish in the right depth of water, you'll find yourself missing bites sometimes, foul looking fish, or sometimes not even getting bites. So to really help me work out where to fish, I've got incremental depth markers on my top kit. So you can see there's a silver band here which is 12 inches from the bottom of the top kit, and then I've got 1 inch increments measured up my top kit. So I know, for example, I caught that fish in 56 inches of water, which is around about 4'8" in old money. So how do I use that, and what does that help me to work out? Well, today I started by plumbing in the deepest part of the water, which was right in front of me, about 4 foot from the bank. Sorry, about 4 meters from the bank. And that was almost a full top kit deep there. It's a short kit I've got in here, one of the Daiwa short kits. So I don't know, that probably gave me 5 and a bit foot of water. Sometimes fishing down the central track can be absolutely brilliant. And that tends to be, in my experience, when you have a settled period of weather, so the water's fairly even in temperature all the way down the column. As you know, in winter, especially in this country, that's quite a rare thing. Much more commonly we have fluctuations in weather as it goes maybe colder one week to slightly warmer and rainy the next, or you could be in a mild spell like we've just had and then have what we've just had here, which is a cold influx of water and a sharp frost last night, which again really mixes up that water column. And it's at times like that when understanding depths of water is at its most critical. So as I said, the deepest water I found around about 5 foot down the central track, and then I've worked my way up the far slope. I mean, you can get into pretty much any depth of water here, because in summer anglers like to fish in maybe 12 inches or less, so you can really get into shallow water if you want to. But what I've done today is come just out of that central track as a starter for 10, so probably about, I don't know, 8 or 10 inches out the deepest water. Found a nice hard bottom going up the far slope, so away from near side bank disturbance, and that's a starter for 10. And as I said, I've marked that depth, I know that depth on my top kit because of my measurements. I'll fish here to start with, and luckily I've probably guessed it quite well today because I've caught in that depth straight away. But if, for example, I felt I wasn't getting as many bites and I saw fish maybe moving nearer the far bank, I could come up into 36 inches of water or 24 inches of water. The main thing is, I then know what depth of water I've caught in, so I can adapt that for my next session. So if today, for example, I found that 56 inches of water was perfect, I'd know exactly what depth I'd caught in for next time I come. So I could plumb around and find the same depth of water, and it's a good starter for 10. Or, for example, I might feel this line has run its course. I've caught a few fish from here, and I need somewhere else to go to keep catching. Well, I'll be able to find the same depth because it's measured on my top kit by looking down either edge or maybe plumbing up a new line over there. So it just allows you to be really accurate in finding the depth of water you're fishing, and then you can stick to that rule and catch more fish. And whether it's in the same session by allowing you to open up more lines, or from session to session, it's just another piece of information you can give yourself very easily that will help you catch more fish. Right, so my next tip ties in perfectly with what I've just said about accuracy, because there's no point being dead accurate and knowing what depth you want to fish in and having it all beautifully measured on your pole if when you ship out you don't present your rig in the right place. And the number one tip I can give anybody when it comes to accuracy at any time of year is use back shot. Use a nice small marker on the far bank. I'm actually using platform leg on the platform out there, and then use a back shot so that, as you can see, the effect a back shot has is it'll keep the line between your pole tip and your float dead vertical, so that your float itself has only really got about 3 or 4 inches of movement around your pole tip. So you know you're fishing in this sort of area. If you didn't have that back shot there, obviously this full length of lash here would serve as a radius around your pole tip, so your rig could be here, 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 anywhere. So especially when you're fishing up to slopes and things, having a back shot helps you to pin that float right where you want it. And it does take a little bit of concentration at first. If you've never used one before, you're going to have a tough hour while you get used to it. But once you're used to it, it will revolutionise your fishing. In terms of size of the back shot, you have to really cater them for the size of floats you want to use. I never really use smaller than what I've got on here, which is 2 number 9s grouped together. If, for example, I was expecting to be shipping in and out a lot, catching loads of fish and maybe fishing up to a slope with a strung rig and loose feeding, that sort of thing, I might spread the back shot out, which just makes it a bit less prone to tangling. Same effect, less prone to tangling, but when it's kinder potting fishing like it is at the minute, and I'm trying to be as accurate as I can over a very small area, 2 back shot, 3 or 4 inches above the float helps you to really pin it in place. Use your marker, line up with it, use your back shot, and know that you're fishing in exactly the right depth of water. So for me, if I do everything right, line up properly, hold that back shot in place, I know I'm fishing in 56 inches of water. So my final tip, and I've saved the best till last here, folks, really. This is probably my number one cold water tip. Now, we've all heard the phrase, fish lighter in winter, get more bites. And I'm a big believer in that. Light lines, small hooks. I do that as much as I can. So today, for example, we've got like an 013 main line, it's an 010 hook length, orange hydro, so it's balanced to land whatever I might hook. The most overlooked part of fishing lighter, and the things that not many anglers really think about and take on board, is the size of float you use. And this is one of the biggest cold water tips I can give you. It was first shown to me and demonstrated by a chap called Tony Bell. Now, people who are watching from Sheffield will know Tony. He used to be a bit of a legend in the early 2000s in Sheffield. Absolute gent and a top angler. And he'd go to venues where people had fished with 4x12 or 4x14 floats, and fish with a 3x8 float or a 4x10 float, and he'd catch loads more roach than anybody else just by fishing a smaller float. Why does it work? Well, there's a number of reasons really. I've already mentioned about that water column, how when it's colder, often you have a band of warmer water midway down in the water column where the fish sit. And because the fish are sat mid-water, a bait that falls through slowly is perhaps more likely to engage them and make them go down and investigate than one that's bombed down with a great big bulk on a heavy rig. So there's that element to it, whereby a lighter float allows your bait to fall slower. As long as obviously you match your shotting pattern, which I've done here. We've got a little strung out pattern going on. But another massive advantage that's overlooked is you see more bites on a light float. Why? Because the whole dynamic, the whole way the rig works is more sensitive. It takes less shot to make the float cock. It takes less movement to make the float go under. As long as you dot it down, have it dotted right down as much as you can. You can see I've actually got a little bit of bristle grease on this. It's slightly overshotted, so the bristle grease just helps it hold in that surface tension. So between those 3 really simple things, 3 things that anybody can do, no matter how expensive your pole, no matter how good your gear, if you mark the depth on your top kit and pay really close attention to being as accurate as you can at this time of year, if you use back shot to make you as accurate as you can be in terms of where you're fishing, so you know that you're fishing in the correct depth, and if you fish with as light a float as you can get away with in the conditions, you will catch more fish this winter. And none of that's about how expensive your gear is. It's just about refining your approach and making yourself aware of what's going on under the water at this time of year. So I hope those 3 tips have helped you as much as they've helped me over the years. And now it's time for the weekend's fishing forecast. So if, like me, you're one of those people who was daft enough to go fishing last weekend in all that wind and all that rain and all your kit's been drenched, and you should definitely go fishing this weekend because it's going to be sunny, it's going to be a little bit breezy, it's going to be warm, and it's a perfect opportunity to dry all your kit out. Unfortunately for me, looking up there, there's a big black cloud coming over, so I'm going to get this week's fishing forecast done as quickly as I can, and hopefully will not get wet because there's something quite nasty on its way over. So weather-wise, first of all, now the forecast showing temperatures anywhere between 9 and 14 degrees, depending on where you are in the UK. But it does look pretty settled weather-wise. Sunny, a little bit of cloud blowing about, and it looks about the same for Saturday and Sunday with those sort of temperatures. Nighttime temperatures, oh, a little bite there. Somehow I missed it, don't know how I managed that. Nighttime temperatures, sort of 7 to 9 degrees, so again, fairly mild for the time of year. That said, I don't know how good the fishing will be this weekend, folks. We have had the first sort of couple of frosts of the year around these parts. I'm not sure if it's been the same where you live, but certainly in the north of England, in the Midlands, I know on Wednesday morning, Tuesday morning, we had some very, very cold temperatures indeed. The good thing is, obviously, the water's had a little bit of time to warm back up after that, so it might well be that on the commercial fisheries, there's still some good fishing to be had. I actually think places will fish quite well this weekend, given those sort of stable, mild weathers. So tactics-wise, what we're doing? Well, today, as you can see, I've taken things really cagey, starting off feeding just with micros, a little bit of ground bait, and fishing with the Fuka 3mm natural micros on the hook. Very much winter tactics to start with. But you've always got the option, of course, to up the ante if you start like this, and that's one of my mantras. Little and often, especially this time of year. Don't kill your peg in the first few minutes. Feed a little bit of bait, no matter where you're going, no matter what style of commercial fishing you're doing, feed a little bit of bait and feel your way into the day. If you're going on the rivers this weekend, I think you could be in for a real treat, because obviously we had a lot of rain through last weekend, the early part of this week, and that'll mean the rivers are carrying a little bit of extra colour, but they should, in most places anyway, be starting to drop now. So that should be a really good sign for the river sport. I myself am actually booked on the River Wye on Sunday, and I'm really looking forward to fishing there. It's somewhere I've never been before, but I noticed looking at the river levels from being almost at the top of its banks last weekend, by the end of this weekend and going into next week, the levels look absolutely perfect for good fishing. A little bit of colour, quite a lot of colour I expect, a little bit of pace, most importantly, the rivers are dropping. So depending on where you are and how much rain you've had in your area, I think the river fishing this weekend will be very good. Dropping rivers, a bit of extra colour and nice mild temperatures, which should mean that the fish want to feed. And what if you're heading out on the canals? Well, I was pleased to see some results from last weekend, and quite a few stretchers fished really well. And if they fished well last weekend with obviously all that cold rain going in, I'd be really excited if I were going canal fishing this weekend. I think it'll be very good. Obviously mild settled temperatures we've talked about. They've had a bit of a flush through last weekend, and now as we are getting into November, I expect a lot of the boaters will have moored up for the winter. What was a nice bite. So I think, don't know what that is, it's very angry. That could be a carp. Could be a big fish. If you're going on the canals, I'd be excited for some good sport, to be honest with you. I think it'll be good roach fishing weather. Again, mild, settled. There'll be a few leaves on the water, which could be a bit of a pain, but just be prepared. I always like to take a big old landing net with me. And I actually have a little bit of pipe lagging around the top of one of my landing nets, which just helps to scrape leaves off the top of the water before the session. It's just a bit of an occupational hazard really with autumn and winter fishing, isn't it, as we move into that time of year. But I think, as I said, the roach sport will be good. There'll be some big fish to catch in areas for sure, some skimmers, maybe a bit of extra colour in some of them canals with the rain and water we had through last week. As you can see, I've only had a short afternoon session here at Partridge Lakes today, and it's been really, really good. Plenty of fish feeding. There we are. So that is a lovely way to round off this week's fishing forecast. To say that these lakes are among the most pressured in the country, they have matches on most days here at Partridge Lakes, always amazes me just how nice the fish are. They're in such good condition. The F1s I've caught today have been absolutely lovely, and if you look at this, a lovely £3 mirror. So if you're going out on the bank, folks, have a great weekend, tight lines. I'm not here next week, but I have got a little treat for you that we'll film today. Some top winter tips from my good friend Martin Stokes. And I'll see you in a couple of weeks when hopefully I'll have some tales of success from the River Wye. Until then, tight line, folks. See you in a couple of weeks.